My friend, what I share with you today emerged from the darkest moments of my training. Insights that came not from victory, but from understanding the very physics of human potential. You see, in those silent hours of exploration, I discovered something that changed everything. The mind doesn't just control force, it creates fields of inevitable outcome. Have you ever noticed how a quantum particle exists in multiple states until observed? This is not just physics. This is the hidden key to unstoppable force. Most seek power through technique, through form, through endless repetition. But tell me, does the electron ask permission to create its magnetic field? Does it struggle to maintain its quantum state? You see, in my deepest studies, I observed something remarkable. When water moves through a narrow channel, it doesn't just flow, it creates vortices, secondary currents that amplify its force. The same principle exists in consciousness. Your thoughts aren't just thoughts. They're quantum fluctuations in the field of possibility, creating their own geometry of inevitable outcome. Consider the moment a superconductor achieves zero resistance. There's no gradual improvement, my friend. At a precise threshold, resistance simply ceases to exist. I discovered our consciousness operates on the same principle. There's a state of mind, a precise configuration of thought and intention, where resistance doesn't merely decrease, it transforms into amplification. This isn't abstract philosophy. When I punch, I'm not simply moving my fist through space. I'm creating what quantum physics calls a field effect, a cascade of inevitable consequences flowing from a single point of perfect clarity. You see, being unstoppable isn't about force at all. It's about understanding the architecture of reality itself. Let me share something I've never revealed before. In my most profound moments of discovery, I learned that consciousness creates its own physics. Just as a black hole bends space itself, a properly aligned mind bends the very fabric of possibility. Have you ever wondered why certain forces in nature don't just overcome resistance, but seem to feed on it? This is what we must understand. First, let me show you how the mind creates its own gravitational field. Not through power, but through perfect alignment with the quantum nature of reality itself. Now, my friend, let me reveal something deeper about the mind's architecture, what I call the three-point awareness system. In quantum physics, we know that particles maintain superposition, existing in multiple states simultaneously. Your consciousness operates in the same way, but with three critical points of existence. Where does true power originate in the mind? Most believe it flows from a single point, your current position, your present thought. But this is like trying to understand a sphere by looking at a single point on its surface. True power emerges from the triangulation of three distinct states of awareness. Think of how a GPS calculates position, not from one satellite, but from 3 points of reference creating intersecting fields. Your mind operates on the same principle. There's your present position, the immediate now. There's your point of possibility, the quantum state of what could be. And there's your point of inevitability, the position that must manifest through the intersection of will and physics. You see, in my years of exploration, I discovered something fascinating about human limitation. Most people think in lines, direct paths from problem to solution, from intention to action. But nature never moves in lines. Have you ever truly observed how water flows? It creates spirals, vortices, geometric patterns that multiply its force through mathematical precision. This is why I tell you, triangular thinking is the key to unstoppable force. When you understand how to hold 3 points of awareness simultaneously, you create what quantum physics calls spatial entanglement. Your mind isn't just calculating possibilities. It's creating a field of inevitable outcomes. My friend, in my deepest training, I observed how force multiplies when consciousness escapes linear patterns. Think of how lightning finds its path, not through straight lines, but through a fractal pattern of possibility. Every branch is a calculation, every fork a new dimension of potential. This is how your mind must operate, not through singular focus, but through geometric awareness that bends the space of possibility itself. Why does water naturally flow in patterns? Because it follows the hidden geometry of the universe itself. Your consciousness must learn to do the same. When you align your 3 points of awareness, present position, quantum possibility, and geometric inevitability, you create what I call a triangle of unstoppable outcome. This isn't philosophy. This is the physics of consciousness itself. Let me show you how this geometric awareness transforms into physical reality. What creates unstoppable momentum in nature, my friend? Consider the hidden mathematics of a growing tree. Most see only the visible growth, but beneath the surface lies a system of inevitable expansion that follows the golden ratio itself. Each root doesn't just grow, it creates what I call points of inevitable growth, mathematical positions in space where expansion becomes a certainty. Your consciousness must operate on the same principle. When a tree encounters an obstacle, it doesn't force its way through. It creates multiple points of growth, each following nature's sacred geometry. The obstacle doesn't impede progress. It becomes a catalyst for exponential expansion. This is the first key to conscious intensity. You see, in my deepest studies of energy systems, I discovered something profound about the nature of force. Energy doesn't increase through mere effort. It multiplies through precise configurations of intention. Think of how a laser amplifies light. It's not about adding more power. It's about creating perfect alignment that transforms ordinary energy into coherent force. How does intensity transform into inevitability? The answer lies in what I call the conscious intensity framework. When you align your mental focus with the same mathematical precision that governs quantum systems, something remarkable happens. Your consciousness doesn't just concentrate, it creates a standing wave of amplified intention, like a superconductor achieving zero resistance. This brings us to one of my most crucial discoveries: circular causality. Have you observed how energy never truly stops, but only transforms its pattern of expression? In your body's bioelectrical system, every neural impulse creates not just an effect, but a cascade of electromagnetic consequences. Your thoughts operate on the same principle. They're not linear events, but circular systems of amplifying potential. My friend, when you understand how to create these energy loops in your consciousness, every action generates its own momentum. Think of how a particle accelerator works. Each circulation amplifies the energy exponentially. Your mind can create the same effect, but only when you understand how to establish these self-reinforcing cycles of thought and action. Watch closely now as I demonstrate how these principles converge in physical reality. My friend, let us now penetrate deeper into the core principles that generate unstoppable force. What creates a field of unstoppable possibility? Think of how an electron moves through space. It doesn't just exist in one position. It creates a probability field, a cloud of pure potential. Your thoughts operate on the same principle. When you understand the physics of mental magnetism, you realize that each thought isn't just a single event. It's creating an electromagnetic field of possibility. Just as electrons align in a magnetic material to create an irresistible force, your thoughts crystallize into patterns that generate their own gravitational pull. This is psychological momentum in its purest form. But here's something deeper I've observed. True power emerges not from rigid patterns, but from what I call strategic spontaneity. When does chaos become strategy? Look at how water behaves in turbulent flow. It creates perfect patterns within apparent randomness. This is the secret of rhythmic disruption. You see, in my most advanced training, I discovered that combat follows wave theory, just as quantum particles exhibit both wave and particle properties. True combat consciousness exists in a state of structured chaos. It's not about memorizing patterns, it's about understanding the mathematical principles that govern all patterns. When you grasp this, you can disrupt any rhythm, create new frequencies of movement that transcend traditional limitations. This leads us to what I call the spiral of inevitability. How does nature create perfect storms? Through triple alignment, the convergence of multiple force vectors creating a self-amplifying system. Your consciousness must achieve the same state. When your awareness, intention, and action align like the forces in a forming hurricane, you create what physicists call a phase transition, a sudden shift from one state of existence to another. My friend, this is where the quantum nature of consciousness reveals its deepest secret. Just as subatomic particles can tunnel through seemingly impenetrable barriers, aligned consciousness can transcend normal limitations. This isn't mysticism, it's the physics of possibility itself. When you understand how to create this triple alignment, your force doesn't just increase, it transforms into a new state of matter entirely. Think of how a superconductor achieves zero resistance. There's no gradual improvement. At a critical threshold, resistance simply ceases to exist. This is what happens when you master these principles. Your force doesn't just grow stronger, it shifts into a new dimension of possibility, where resistance becomes irrelevant. Watch now as I demonstrate how these principles converge in physical reality. My friend, now we reach the deepest level of understanding, where theory transforms into unstoppable reality. What makes a hurricane unstoppable? Not its initial force, but its ability to create self-reinforcing energy systems that grow stronger through their own motion. In my most profound moments of discovery, I observed how a hurricane doesn't just maintain its energy, it creates what meteorologists call a positive feedback loop. Each rotation amplifies the next. Each cycle strengthens the whole. This is the key to advanced implementation of our principles. Your consciousness must become this kind of self-amplifying system. You see, every thought, every intention creates a ripple in the quantum field of possibility. But when you understand how to structure these ripples, to create resonant patterns that amplify each other, something remarkable happens. Your consciousness doesn't just influence reality. It creates its own gravitational field that bends the space of possibility itself. How does the mind transcend time? Consider how quantum entanglement works. two particles instantaneously affecting each other regardless of distance. Your neural pathways can achieve the same state of instant communication. In my deepest training, I discovered that consciousness can exist in multiple states simultaneously, just like quantum superposition. This is where combat consciousness evolves beyond traditional understanding. You're not just predicting movements or calculating responses. You're creating what quantum physicists call a probability collapse, making certain outcomes inevitable through the precise manipulation of possibility fields. When you master this, your body doesn't react to events. It moves through pre-created pathways of inevitable action. But here's something I've never shared before. Where does energy transform into force? In the resonant space between thought and action. Think of how a laser works. It doesn't just amplify light. It creates coherent energy through perfect alignment. Your consciousness must achieve this same coherence. Each thought, each movement must resonate at the same frequency, creating what I call bioelectrical optimization. You see, your nervous system isn't just a network of signals. It's a quantum computer capable of processing multiple realities simultaneously. When you understand how to accelerate these neural pathways, time itself becomes relative. Your consciousness doesn't just perceive opportunities, it creates them through the manipulation of quantum probability fields. This is where mastery truly begins. Every movement becomes an expression of perfect resonance between thought and action. Every technique becomes a manifestation of quantum certainty. You're no longer fighting against resistance. You're creating fields of inevitable outcome through the precise application of consciousness itself. Watch closely now as I demonstrate how these principles converge in their highest form. Now, my friend, we arrive at the ultimate transformation, the point where resistance itself becomes a source of power. How does resistance become power? Think of how a black hole transforms matter into pure energy. This isn't destruction. It's the ultimate conversion of form into force. You see, in my deepest explorations, I discovered that the mind creates its own gravitational fields, what I call mental gravity wells. Just as space curves around massive objects, reality itself begins to curve around properly aligned consciousness. This isn't metaphor. It's the physics of psychological transformation. Most seek to overcome resistance, to fight against it. But at the quantum level, resistance is merely a form of energy, awaiting transformation. When you understand how to create these mental gravity wells, every obstacle, every form of opposition automatically converts itself into amplifying force. This is what I mean by psychological gravity. What makes some forces inevitable? Consider how planets maintain their orbits, not through constant effort, but through the perfect alignment of mass, motion, and gravitational field. Your consciousness can achieve the same state. When you align your mental force vectors with the underlying geometry of reality, you create what physicists call a path of least action, a trajectory that becomes inevitable through its own mathematical perfection. This is where all our principles converge, my friend. The triangulation of awareness, the quantum state manipulation, the energy circulation, they all serve to create this field of psychological gravity. When mastered, you don't just move through resistance. You transform the very nature of opposition itself. Every force directed against you becomes part of your own gravitational field. Look now as I demonstrate the ultimate principle of psychological gravity. When does force become philosophy, my friend? At the moment you realize that all we've explored, the quantum fields, the psychological gravity, the geometric awareness, they're all expressions of a single unified truth. Just as Einstein sought the unified field theory of physics, I discovered the unified field theory of combat consciousness. You see, at the highest level of understanding, there is no separation between mind and body, between thought and action, between force and flow. They are all manifestations of the same underlying reality. The triangulation of awareness creates the geometry of possibility. The geometry of possibility generates psychological momentum. Psychological momentum establishes unstoppable force. In my lifetime of exploration, this is what I've discovered. True power isn't about domination. It's about alignment with the deepest principles of reality itself. When your consciousness achieves perfect resonance with the quantum nature of existence, you transcend the very concept of resistance. Force doesn't overcome obstacles. It transforms them into inevitable outcomes. This is the final evolution of understanding, my friend. The moment when you realize that unstoppable force isn't something you create. It's something you become through perfect alignment with the physics of possibility. Every principle we've explored converges in this single point of transcendent awareness. Now, my friend, as you stand at this threshold of understanding, I leave you with this question. What will you make inevitable? For when you grasp these principles fully, reality itself becomes a field of infinite possibility, waiting for your consciousness to collapse it into unstoppable certainty. Remember, the force that changes the world isn't the one that pushes hardest. It's the one that aligns most perfectly with the very fabric of existence itself.